Hi there, my name is Rebecca Swift and I am the Global Head of Creative Insights at Getty Images, and I am talking to you from London. I am going to be hiding in the top corner of the screen because I'm going to be talking about images, and I'd much rather you look at them than look at me. As I said, I head up the Creative Insights team, and we're looking at visual language, how content is used across markets, regions, and industries. We're looking at not only understanding how image is being used right now, but how it might be used in the future. And the creative team at Getty Images supports a contributor community of over 300,000 photographers, filmmakers, and illustrators. And we do that through briefing and art direction. We've been working this way for 25 years. It's our 25th anniversary this year. And we're always looking to nudge our customers, of which there are well over 1 million, in the right direction in terms of the content that they're using. I personally am really keen to do as much good as I possibly can in the position that I'm currently in. And it's really important, I think, for anyone who is creating and choosing visual content to question why it looks the way it does, why it's created in the way it does, because the consumer certainly is asking those questions too. So before I go forward, I'm going to go a little bit back. The view of stock has traditionally been that it was the home of the cliche. It is and always has been an industry that reacts to market demand. The woman laughing alone at salad that you can see on the screen right now is a typical example of the generic type of content that was, and to be honest, still is in demand across the world. And generic imagery, which stock again has typically been seen as creating a lot of, emerged at a time when brands were building multiple digital platforms and needed content that would work across countries, was aspirational enough across cultures, and the people featured were ethnically ambiguous enough to be relevant broadly. And this image on screen right now is pretty typical of what was created at the time. This image has been huge across the world. It's been used by over 30,000 different companies and was as successful in Europe, Asia, and in North America. It was actually shot in Russia by a female photographer who is based out of Moscow, and it's actually an off moment from when the model was messing around in between takes. But the reason it's very successful as a stock image is because it works on many different levels to convey a ton of concepts, and you can see them on the right hand side of the screen. And that's even without considering the huge number of environmentally friendly concepts that could also be applied to the image. And it is actually it's worth looking through through our top sellers over time, because it shows kind of where we've traveled from and where we're traveling to. It shows an evolution, and this slide shows the top selling women by year, and 2007 is exactly the type of content I just mentioned. It's a beautiful young Caucasian woman. She's pretty generic, and she works across across regions. And then as you go through the years, we move through into 2011, which was when the word authenticity was probably at peak usage, and we start to see a woman doing very well who has no makeup and hasn't been styled in any way. In 2015 was when we started working with the Lean In organization on representing women in business in a more authentic way. And you can see here that we have a young female small business owner. This was also post the financial crisis, when small businesses were very much the visual of the day. 2017, we saw the rise of the solo adventurer, and you can see that in that image there, kind of moving so far away from the woman herself that it's not about her, it's about what she's doing. 2018, which is obviously very much more recently, we saw representation in corporate business for a non-Caucasian woman with natural hair, which was a great step forward. And then last year we saw this lovely image, which is really capturing emotional beauty. It's a woman not acting to camera, unaware. She's in a moment of happiness and joy, and shot incredibly well as well. And despite all these shifts we've seen and the conversations around authenticity, the data that when asked, that women consistently respond is that they don't feel represented in the media or in advertising. And the 70% was an insight that Dove used when we started working on the Show Us collection last year. Beyond that, while advertising does feature women predominantly, 94% of brands feature women, it still tends to be in stereotypical roles. And then when you look into women of colour, you'll find that only 15% of women are shown as being represented beyond their skin colour. So stereotypes still are enduring, or at least the perception is that they're still enduring. And this is really where we started working to actively break stereotypes, and the Show Us project, which came from Dove, was exactly to do that. And they worked with Edelman to produce reports on the types of women who broke stereotypes, seen in beauty advertising in particular, and they looked at that information, and we took the data that they created, and we created 39 briefs in 23 different languages across 39 countries. And the aim was to address the stereotype, but also to address the stereotype of the male photographer. So we work with Girl Gaze, who are an online community who brought female and non-binary photographers to shoot these briefs. And the result became the Show Us campaign, which I believe has now won over 40 industry awards. We won something at the Effies recently. But additionally, we trained the photographers to shoot content for the stock collection. And this is some of the results. So we expanded the brief beyond beauty imagery. We ran a training program, I think we did 8 in total, to help photographers who mainly came from documentary and Instagram backgrounds to shoot commercially. And this was a pretty long process, actually. It was 18 months in the making. And we used the briefs that we had created to shoot content that we knew our customers wanted in terms of subject matter, but we created it with women that you were less expecting to see. So moving customers out of their comfort zone, leading them into content that was a bit more representative. There's some more content here. And more importantly, we also had the talent choose her own keywords and tags. And as we all know, search is king, and keywords are incredibly important. But in order to take control of her own narrative, the talent has her self-chosen tags attached to her images. And you can see this is an example on the screen there, and it's highlighted in yellow. And I mentioned authenticity, and this is really, I think, as authentic as it gets. It's a female photographer from the same community shooting another female. The talent has approval on the image and the text. Now, even our news business that adheres to really strict ethical guidelines doesn't go this far. And the most important thing about this project, not everybody has moved in this direction. Not every company that we work with needs this level of authenticity. But internally, it's driven our business forward. And this kind of thinking is now included in how we shoot other subject matter as well. So we're much more thoughtful about who shoots, what content, and who is photographed. And we're testing and learning from that content. So as we create and as the collection grows, we learn more about what actually works and what possibly could work. Which brings me on actually to the present day. And I can't talk about 2020 without mentioning COVID. And I showed you the top selling women of years gone by. And this year is likely to be something like what you're seeing in front of you here, of these women working at home. Now, over 10,000 businesses have used these 5 images alone in the last 6 months. And most of what we see and what we're going to see will be affected by COVID this year. But we have also seen searches around diversity and inclusion doubling since 2019. So, we've some of that has been driven by the Black Lives Matter movement, It fueled the discussion around race globally this summer. And in general, there's been a growth of empathy as we're all in this together, which has meant more focus on being inclusive and ensuring that groups don't get left out of that experience and of that representation. So therefore, we've seen more nuance in the search terms that people are using. For example, and as you can see on the screen now, not thinking about disability as one entity, but being considerate of the diversity within disability. Which leads me on to intersectionality. And this is where we're heading, and it's where demographics connect. We all have multiple identities and not all are visible, but as content creators, we have to be aware of this and also account for it. So intersectionality also highlights where certain groups are missed out or even discriminates against. So, you know, despite the move towards inclusive visual stories, there are some groups that are excluded, and this is where we're really focusing our work right now. And I'll give you some examples of that to show you what I mean. So Black fatherhood is not visualized as much as white fatherhood, and you know, we love this image internally. Such a lovely moment, and we've spent time really considering what, you know, what masculine role models look like, and as COVID has highlighted, what positive mental health looks like across all male demographics. And so, you know, something like this is really capturing that rather beautifully. Disability is another intersection that we are very, very keen on exploring further. We've partnered with Verizon and 17 disability organisations to ensure that the content we create of people living with disabilities is authentic. So all too often we hear about photo shoots or TVs and movies that hire able-bodied talent to act disabled. So we've created a collection of 3,000, and actually it grows each month, stills and videos that are authentic, that feature diversity within that, and that the disability organisations have approved. And the biggest learning that I got from working with the organisations on this was that a lot of imagery that you see, the person with a disability is either the focus of the image in a group, or their disability is the focus. But actually the best way to move the visual language forward is to feature people with disabilities in society, active in society, living, loving, as in this lovely image here, and working. We know that less than 1% of advertising features people with disabilities, despite a fifth of people having some form of disability. So we set out to nudge our customers towards the content that will help with the way disability is represented and therefore perceived, and we will continue to do that. Similarly, the transgender community is typically othered. They're focused on as separate to society. We see a lot of beautiful portraits of transgender people, but it gives the impression that they live separate to the rest of the society. So we're currently working to bring transgender people into social content, like what you see here, to change the perception there as well. In addition, we're moving LGBT content away from pride flags and moving that again into the everyday lifestyle and business. Aging is a particular favourite of mine. This is another layer of demographics. We should all be looking at images of older people every day, really, to determine our life aspirations. But the depiction of aging is, quite frankly, terrifying, and seems to involve either walking on a beach with someone who's similarly dressed to yourself, or sitting down a lot. So we partnered with AARP in the States, and if you don't know AARP, they're a non-profit organisation. They're huge, and they research older age and represent the over 50s in policy making. So they're a very influential organisation. And we've now created what's called the Disrupt Aging collection, which is growing really fast and proving to be incredibly successful. And this image on the screen now is a great example of a woman in her 60s still working in a cool business environment. And this is really where we're pitching this type of content. And finally, because we can't forget the younger generation either, we very, very recently, in the last few weeks, launched a collection of content that focuses on children from diverse backgrounds in the UK. We've partnered with the BBC to create that, and we'll use this collection to fund more shoots by photographers from underrepresented communities. So it will also give back and do good. So what's next? Well, while we're while we're considering age, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, gender representation, we're also now looking at how all of that intersects with body shape. And we recently ran some consumer research with YouGov around the world and found that body shapes is in the forefront of consumers' minds more than all the demographics I just mentioned. And it's more likely to be a source of discrimination too. It's not something that really gets discussed as much in the debate around diversity in visual communication. It's very difficult to caption. It's very difficult to search. You know, how is a body shape defined? We know that women feel discriminated when they're too heavy. We know men feel they're discriminated against when they are too skinny or weak or tall. And we know the word real is a favoured keyword, and obviously it's very central to the Dove campaign, for example. But that's it. How do we understand the spectrum of body shapes? But what we do know is when you feature demographics that are less represented, that they are real, they have a real body shape. I'm going to use that word real because I haven't found anything to replace it yet. And they're shown having a real emotional experience. The connection to the viewer is universal. So this is what we're researching right now: emotional beauty and the universal experience. So we've gone from generic to the universal experience. And this is what I'll be focusing on for the next few months. So thank you very much.